Hi, welcome to the next installment of Billy's Books. We're going back to Star Wars again. We're even going back to Star Wars Thrawn again. I did a review before of Star Wars Thrawn. This one is Thrawn Alliances, where he hangs out with everybody's favorite villain, Darth Vader. Okay, so many of Timothy Zahn's stories, he has sort of a technique for the way he builds up, sets up stories. He tends to tell parallel stories, sort of present versus flashback, and he jumps back and forth. So in this one, there's two team-ups for Thrawn and Darth Vader. The present tense is when the Emperor gathers them at the beginning of the book. The Emperor gathers them together and says, I'm going to send you guys on a mission. You guys got to work together. And they're all like, whatever, but they do it. And then once it starts, they do a flashback to when Thrawn and Anakin Skywalker, they had first met and did sort of a mission, almost like a heist back then, to rescue Padme. But right now, so far, we've seen one chapter from Padme's perspective, where she is following a lead to a planet that her handmaiden had gone, and she was following the handmaiden. Then she disappeared, so Anakin followed her. And then that's where he met Thrawn in orbit with that planet. So then they pull some sort of heist. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Lots and lots of characters. Meanwhile, in the present day, the Emperor says, out in the middle of nowhere, on that same planet, coincidentally, I sense a disturbance in the Force way out there, and you two are going, Thrawn and Vader. And they're like, all right, so they do. And Vader tries to figure out what's going on with that sense of the Force, and that we learn from the dynamic of the two of them working that we know from the previous story that Thrawn is a very meticulous, patient, relatively easygoing guy, or at least calm, and we discover, as we already knew, that Anakin and Darth Vader, both before and after the change, are impatient. And certainly Darth Vader sees any sort of questions from subordinates as insubordinate. Any questions are like, just shut up and do it, is what he always says. And Thrawn usually listens to those questions and then has an answer or doesn't, but he doesn't punish them. He also appreciates when his crew anticipates his needs and things like that. So once again, right now, Darth Vader's kind of a jerk, as we knew. Anakin is an impatient Jedi who seems to be, on his way to making errors through, sacrificing the general mission with personal attachments, which of course is against the Jedi code. There's a scene in here that I thought was kind of interesting, where Anakin and Thrawn are discussing. Padme comes up. A remarkable person, Thrawn said, an equally remarkable association you have with her. Anakin felt his eyes narrow, because he's trying to cut. It's still a secret or whatever that he's married to her. He'd taken great pains to conceal his true relationship with Padme. What do you mean? It's clear from the way you speak that she's not only an ambassador of the Republic. There's a personal bond between you. Of course there is, Anakin said. I've known Padme since I was 9 years old. We've been through battles and prisons. He felt a flicker of pain as the death of Qui-Gon suddenly flashed to mind. And seen a lot of friends and colleagues die. Too many. Not to mention, we've lived through a long war. Yes, we're close companions, but that's all. For a long moment, Thrawn was silent. Anakin stretched out to the Force, trying to read the other's sense, wishing they'd been put together in the same cell so that he could at least see his expression. I understand, he said at last. I like Thrawn because he keeps his cards close to his chest. He's very observant. He doesn't miss anything. Like, one of the things that he does is he can actually see a little bit more into the infrared, so he can tell when people are heating up. And he usually, when they tell the chapter from his perspective, it's in all his sort of extra human observations, or at least observations in general, are put in italics to see that he's extra paying attention. Whereas Anakin and or Darth Vader are not. They're so impatient that they miss the details, and sometimes they're crucial details that Thrawn has to catch him on. So one other little detail I thought was interesting, since I'm not going to tell you too much about the book. However, let's just say I am enjoying it because I like the way Timothy Zahn writes. since we see the stories, each chapter is from a different perspective, or each section is from a different perspective of a character. Sometimes we see the story from the perspective of Padme, sometimes we see it from Anakin's, sometimes from Vader's, sometimes from Thrawn's perspective. Sometimes some of Thrawn's officers are also, we see the whole cast of characters from their perspective, which is also kind of cool. But what's interesting is when Darth Vader thinks about his flashbacks to before he was Darth Vader, he refers to himself, aka Anakin, as the Jedi in third person. And also at one point, Thrawn mentions Anakin to Darth Vader, and Darth Vader goes, "Anakin Skywalker is dead." And Thrawn just says, "So I've heard."
The thing is, Thrawn is really really kind of cool, you know? I mean, he, he's not like a jerk or like the Emperor, or, if you will. He's like actually really consistent and kind of usually kind of pretty nice to the people he works with. I think he's just the consummate professional. To have the consummate professional come in and maybe fix things up after episode 6 would be very interesting, and then somehow lose it by episode 7, but still, interesting concept, don't you think? Thrawn's a pretty good guy. Interesting to have him so high in the Empire, don't you think?
As with all Billy's books, if you can't do, review.